So in the previous section, we learned the 5 properties of a parallelogram. In this section, we want to identify if the shape we're working with is a parallelogram. So basically, we're just going to test or confirm whether those properties exist in the shape that we're working on. So how can we determine if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram? Well, we check to see any of the properties. We test if both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. We test if both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. We test to see if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. We test the consecutive interior angles being supplementary in all directions, so across and up and down. We check or test to see if the diagonals bisect each other. So those 5 are the properties of a parallelogram. If any of those properties are true, then we have a parallelogram. We don't have to confirm all of them. We have to check and confirm one of them. The new one is if we have one pair of opposite sides that has both properties, parallel and congruent. So both pairs of opposite sides are parallel, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, or one pair of opposite sides has both properties, parallel and congruent. So we do whatever work is necessary to figure out if any of those properties are true. Let's look at examples. That's actually the entire lesson. So we're asked if it's a parallelogram and why. In the first one, 5 and 5, 4 and 4. So we're going to say yes. Both pair of opposite, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. In question B, we have parallel lines and they are congruent. So again, yes, one pair of opposite sides are parallel and congruent. In question C, 50 plus 130 is 180. So these are supplementary. But we don't know anything about the other angles. So we have to say no. Not a parallelogram. We don't have the information. We don't know about the other angles. If it's a parallelogram, we know opposite angles are congruent and the consecutive angles are supplementary in all directions. But we don't know if this is a parallelogram. We're being asked, and we just don't have the information. In question D, we know one pair of opposite angles are congruent, and that's all we know. So again, not a parallelogram. We do not have enough information about the missing sides or the missing angles. Let's look at a few more. Question E, looking at the way things are marked, diagonal 1 was bisected. Diagonal 2 was bisected. Yes, it's a parallelogram because both diagonals were bisected. In question F, yes, both pair of opposite angles are congruent. We have pair 1 and pair 2. Both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. In question G, yes, we can say both pair of opposite angles are congruent, or we can say consecutive interior angles are supplementary in all directions. And in our last question, just giving ourselves a little room here, in our quadrilateral, the angles total 360. So we're going to find the missing angle. And we can find out that it's 60. So now we can say yes, both pair of opposite angles are congruent. So sometimes we have to do a little work. We could have a bunch of algebraic expressions that we have to work out. But once we identify the information, we can determine if it is a parallelogram.